Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to be doing another installation of my absolute favorite series, and that is everything you need to know about a particular ability. Today we are going to be covering the Ravenous Flock, a really powerful passive that Swain has. Obviously, I'd love for it to be buffed a bit, but it is really strong in its own right, particularly when you know how to use it to its full effect. Now, if this is the first video that you're watching of this series, I heavily recommend you go and check out the everything you need to know about Q, W, and E. Still working on the R video, but that should be coming across soon. So if I do not cover a tip that you know about the passive, please comment down below. And if I teach you something new, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more Swain related content. With all that out of the way, guys, let's get into tip number 1. Alright, and getting into the first part, now you are able to use your passive whenever there is a immobilizing effect on a enemy champion. Now, we don't go walk around the rift just seeing people saying with a big immobilize on top of it. So, when a champion is immobilized, it means that they're either airborne, they're doing a forced action, which is a charm, flee, or taunt. They are rooted, they are slept, they are in a stasis effect, they are stunned, or they are suppressed, and that is all. You cannot do it off of slows, so those are the effects that you are looking for when you are looking to use your passive on enemy champions. Now, it is really important to understand that it either has to be you or an ally or a neutral jungle camp proccing that immobilization of the enemy champion to use your passive. So, for example, on a blast cone, when an enemy is doing it themselves, you are unable to use your passive. If an enemy is proccing the blast cone for his ally, so an enemy and his friendly enemy is popping it, you will not be able to do it. But if an ally pops a blast cone with an enemy on it, you will be able to use your passive. If you proc the blast cone, you will also be able to use your passive on the enemy champion. So being wary of that is extremely important, and this is also the same with neutral camps. Where is it? And we are going to spawn a Cloud Drake, and we are going to have a target enemy dummy right there. We are going to slap this Drake, and he is going to knock back, and you are able to use your passive. This works exactly the same with the Rift Herald, as well as the Rift Herald charges on tower. As well as, what I mean when I say Rift Herald at first is he does a initial charge when you're fighting him here, as well as the Baron knockups. You're going to be able to use your passive on the enemy champions that are getting hit by those knockups, and that is just a really quick and dirty basic overview of when you can use your passive in different situations. And I'll wrap up tip number 1. Alright, and getting into tip number 2 that is a little bit different. A lot of people aren't going to understand it as much. It isn't as basic of a tip, but this can be crucial, particularly if you're looking for a back in behind enemy territory. Now, if you did not know, when the crows are carrying the soul, you will only, or the crows carrying the soul will only be seen by the enemies if they have vision of Swain. So if you ever hit a W, you can see the crow is coming to me. So those crows will only be seen if the enemy has a vision of you through a ward or through minions, or there is an enemy champion around. So keeping that in mind, it is important to understand that. I always love throwing out my W and then doing my back. I always look for a W target. Might as well look for the passive stack, get a little bit more extra health before my back timing. This is what everyone should be doing, in my opinion. So you need to be careful if you are in a precarious situation. Maybe you're doing a recall from a really risky spot. You do not want to have the crow coming right back to you and showing the enemies where you are, because some people will track that. Not a lot of people will get it, but a lot of there will be some players that will be tracking that. So make sure that you are hiding when you are able to and not giving away your position in those really risky situations. And that will wrap up tip number 2. Alright, and getting to tip number 3, just to give you guys a better understanding. So, the heals that you get from the soul fragment only scale with level. As you can see right here, it goes from 109 to 190 based off of your level. The only way to increase the healing of these soul fragment heals that are procced when you use your passive or when you get a W off is when you have your R up. It is going to double the health collected with the soul fragment. So say you're getting dived up in the top lane, which has been happening to me so much since I've been playing up in the top lane, using your ultimate to really get more heals. Maybe there's 2 enemies diving me, getting those massive heals on the enemies when you are in those rough spots can be very, very effective. As you can see, a large chunk of health just came back when I had them in that situation. So making sure that you are having your ultimate up when you are in tough situations or you're about to die is really going to help you get more healing back from your soul fragments. So keeping this in mind will help you out overall in your Swain play, and that will wrap up this tip. All right, and getting into the next tip, a very important thing to understand about the passive on use is that it does scale with cooldown. As you can see here, it says that the effect has a 10-second cooldown of when you're able to right-click enemies and pull them towards yourself. So you can see here, we're going to use the passive proc, and it's only at a 5-second cooldown with this very, very insanely heavy CDR build. So keeping this in mind, to always kind of match it around the E. They're never going to be around the same cooldowns. Usually the passive is going to have a second or two longer than the Nevermore route. So this is going to be just a bit of game knowledge that should help you in understanding that when you're building more CDR, you should be able to get more stacks, more passive stacks, more health, and just overall be more of a menace in team fights when you have more CDR, because you are able to just grip people out of positions that they are looking to be in. And that will wrap up this tip. All right, and getting into the next tip, talking about using your passive proc in the optimal way is going to be very important, particularly if you're not running a high CDR build and you're going a lot of damage, just straight up damage. This is going to be a big tip for you, and that is gripping the enemies into the absolute worst place possible, and also pre-grip, repositioning yourself if it might be worse a little bit to the right or a little bit worse to the left. You want to make sure that you are put yourself in the enemy's shoes. Where's the last place that you would want to be in the fight? That should be a pretty good thing. And then also just gripping people into W's is also a very effective way to set up the CC change. So making sure that you are using your passive in this optimal way is going to increase your overall Swain play by quite a bit. And that will wrap up this tip for Swain. All right, and getting into the final tip for Swain's passive, we are talking about team fights. Now, it is actually really important that you are not just too trigger happy with using passives on the first enemy target that you are able to. You want to do it the most impactful pull and waiting for the opportune moment to use it, unless you're on a super high CDR build. It's very easy to understand because it's a 10% cooldown. You just hover over your ability haste, so we know it's going to be about a 5-second cooldown on our passive, so we can do a little bit more rapid fire with this build. But when you're early in builds and it's a very long cooldown of 10 seconds, not having a passive proc up because you used it on a tank Tahm Kench and you didn't wait for a CC to come in on the enemy Jinx is going to be a way to easily lose team fights if you are not using it for the optimal thing. So do not be that Swain who is just super trigger happy with his passives. This is gonna take a couple of games, but once you get a better understanding of it and making sure that you're respecting the cooldown of your passive is going to just be a great way to carry games with Swain and getting those people out of position on the really strong hyper carry champions. That's going to wrap up my video, guys. If you have any questions for me, you can hit me up in the comments down below. And finally, it's just going to come down to games. A lot of people I see sometimes Swain's just pulling people and that are going to just kill them. It is super tempting to get the passive stack, get the extra 5 HP, but sometimes you really don't want to be passive procking on people that maybe are looking to chase you, or maybe pulling enemy champions into your allies that do not want those champions there. So that'll wrap my video, guys. If you have any questions for me, hit me up in the comments down below. And as always, take it easy.